Welcome to Berlin. It's war-torn and divided. Berlin has emerged as one of Europe's top destinations, captivating, historic, fun-loving, and constantly evolving. The tour begins. The Reichstag. The Reichstag is the heart of Germany's government. It's where the Bundestag, the lower house of Germany's parliament, meets to govern the nation, similar to the U.S. House of Representatives. Berlin has always been Germany's capital, whatever the form of government, from the first dukes of Brandenburg in medieval times, to the kings and emperors of Prussia, the Weimar Republic, Hitler and the Nazis, communist East Germany, and on to the democracy of today. Think of the history this Reichstag has seen. When the building was inaugurated in 1895, Germany was still a kingdom, ruled by the Hohenzollern family that had reigned here for nearly 500 years. Back then, the Reichstag was far from the real center of power. That was a mile east of here at the Royal Palace. Kaiser Wilhelm II disdainfully called this place the Reichsaffenhaus, the chatting house for monkeys. But after the emperor was deposed in World War I, the German Republic was proclaimed right on this spot. Look above the door to see the promise they carved into the facade, dem deutschen Volk, to the German people. That first democracy, known as the Weimar Republic, proved weak. Meanwhile, the storm of National Socialism was growing, the Nazis. Soon the Reichstag had dozens of duly elected National Socialists, and eventually Adolf Hitler seized power. Then, in 1933, the Reichstag building caught fire and nearly burned down.
Do they know how that happened?
Well, no one's 100% sure. The Nazis blamed the communists. Many believe it was a setup and that Hitler himself had planned the fire as an excuse to frame the communists and grab power for himself. Whatever happened, it worked. With Hitler as Führer and real democracy a thing of the past, the Reichstag was hardly used. But it remained a powerful symbol. That's why, after Hitler led Germany into World War II, the Reichstag was a prime target for Allied bombers. It survived, but you can still see the bomb damage. Look close at the inscription above the door and notice the stone patches where they repaired it. As World War II wound down and Soviet troops advanced on the city, it was here, at the Reichstag, that 1,500 German troops made their last stand before Berlin fell. After the war, Berlin was divided into East and West. The Berlin Wall ran right behind the Reichstag. The Reichstag, now in a kind of no-man's land, fell into disuse as the West German capital was moved from Berlin to the remote city of Bonn, further west.
But now, the wall is gone.
Right. When the Berlin Wall fell in 1989 and Germany was reunited, the Reichstag once again became the focus of the new nation. It was renovated by British architect Norman Foster, who added the glass dome or cupola. In 1999, the new Reichstag was reopened and the parliament reconvened. To many Germans, the proud resurrection of their Reichstag symbolizes the end of a terrible chapter in their country's history. Look now at the modern dome. The Reichstag's dome rises 155 feet above the ground. Inside the dome, a cone of 360 mirrors reflect natural light into the legislative chamber below. Lit from inside after dark, this gives Berlin a memorable nightlight. The environmentally friendly cone, with an opening at the top, also helps with air circulation, expelling stale air from the legislative chamber and pulling in fresh, cool air from above. Check out some sights near the Reichstag. To the left of the Reichstag, at the Bundestag U-Bahn stop, you'll see a big federal building. Beyond that, in the distance, is the tower of the huge main train station, the Hauptbahnhof. The tower is marked DB for Deutsche Bahn, the German rail company. Further left is the mammoth white concrete and glass chancellery. The structure is nicknamed the washing machine by Berliners for its hygienic spin cycle appearance. It's the office of Germany's most powerful person, the Chancellor. To remind the Chancellor who he or she works for, Germany's Reichstag, housing the parliament, is about 6 feet taller than the Chancellery building itself. It's a memorial that marks the moment when the Reichstag and its democracy came up against Adolf Hitler and the rising tide of fascism. Looks a bit like a bike rack.
In reality, it's a row of slate stones sticking out of the ground. This is the memorial to politicians who opposed Hitler.
The row of 96 slabs remembers the 96 members of the Reichstag who were persecuted and murdered because their politics didn't agree with Chancellor Hitler's. At the end of World War II, Hitler was defeated, and the city was bombed and essentially destroyed. That's a theme we'll encounter time and again on this walk. In 1945, the western half of Berlin was liberated by the U.S. and the other Allies. Meanwhile, the eastern half of the city fell under the control of the Russian-dominated Soviet Union. We're approaching the line where the city was split in two. As you walk down Ebertstrasse, you're tracing the course of where the Berlin Wall once stood. The row of white crosses along the railing is the Berlin Wall Victims' Memorial. It commemorates some of the East Berliners who died trying to cross the wall. During the wall's 28 years, 136 people were killed at the wall while trying to escape. Berlin Wall was erected in 1961. While the wall is long gone, you can see memorial bricks in the pavement indicating where it once stood. It was put up by the Soviet-dominated communist government of East Germany. It formed a 96-mile-long barrier circling the entire area of West Berlin. It stood between the Soviet-controlled East and the U.S.-leaning West. The wall, or Mauer, was actually two walls. The outer was a 12-foot-high concrete barrier topped with barbed wire and a rounded pipe-like surface to discourage grappling hooks. Sandwiched between the walls was a no-man's land, or death strip, between 30 and 160 feet wide. More than 100 sentry towers kept a close eye on the wall. On their way into the death strip, would-be escapees would trip a silent alarm which alerted sharpshooters. According to documents, border guards fired a total of nearly 1,700 times and made 3,000 arrests. There were about 5,000 documented successful escapes. 565 of those were East German guards. The Brandenburg Gate. The Brandenburg Gate is a massive, classical-looking monument crowned with a 4-horse chariot. It's the grandest and last survivor of the 14 gates in Berlin's Old City Wall. This one led to the neighboring city of Brandenburg. The gate was the symbol of Prussian-controlled Berlin. The majestic chariot on top is driven by the Goddess of Peace. When Napoleon conquered Prussia in 1806, he took this statue back with him to the Louvre in Paris. Then, after the Prussians defeated Napoleon, they got it back. That was in 1813. And the Goddess of Peace was renamed the Goddess of Victory. From 1961 to 1989, the Brandenburg Gate was the symbolic dividing point between East and West Berlin. You see, after World War II, the four victorious allies, the British, French, Americans, and Russian Soviets, divvied up the city into administrative zones. The American-leaning free market city of West Berlin was on this side of the Brandenburg Gate. On the other was Soviet-controlled communist East Berlin. In short order, the paranoid Soviets started closing off free passage. First came a blockade of West Berlin that had to be broken by flying in supplies in the Berlin airlift of 1949. American presidents traveled here to Berlin to show their solidarity with the West. President Kennedy gave a speech near here declaring, "Ich bin ein Berliner," I am a Berliner. President Reagan stood directly in front of the Brandenburg Gate and demanded of his Soviet counterpart, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." By the 1980s, it was becoming clear that the once mighty Soviet Empire was slowly crumbling from within. Resistance grew, but no one could have predicted what happened next. Almost out of the blue, the ecstatic moment arrived, November 9, 1989. The world rejoiced at the sight of happy Berliners standing atop the wall. They chipped away at it with hammers, passed beers to their long-lost cousins on the other side, and adorned the Brandenburg Gate like flowers on a parade float. To everyone's surprise, the wall came down. Eventually, it was physically dismantled, and Berliners east and west could now enjoy total freedom. Pariserplatz marks the start of Unter den Linden, the broad boulevard that stretches before you. Parisian Square was so named after the Prussians defeated France and Napoleon in 1813. The square was once filled with important governmental buildings, but all were bombed to smithereens in World War II. For decades, it was an unrecognizable, deserted no-man's land, cut off from both east and west by the wall. But now it's rebuilt, and the banks and hotels that were here before the bombing have reclaimed their original places, with a few modern additions. And the winners of World War II, the United States, France, Great Britain, and Russia, enjoyed this prime real estate. Their embassies are all on or near the square. For now, turn your attention to the following building, the one that juts into the square and overlooks Unter den Linden Boulevard. This is the ritzy Hotel Adlon. The original hotel was demolished after World War II and rebuilt in 1997. Over the years, this venerable place has hosted celebrities and VIPs, from Charlie Chaplin to Albert Einstein.
Wasn't it here that Michael Jackson?
Yes, exactly. It was here that pop star Michael Jackson shocked millions by dangling his baby over the railing. It was the second balcony up. Memorial to the Murdered Jews of Europe. This Holocaust memorial consists of 2,711 coffin-shaped pillars covering an entire city block. It remembers the 6 million Jews who were killed by the Nazis during World War II. Completed in 2005, it's an essential stop for any visit to Berlin. It was the first formal German government-sponsored Holocaust memorial. Using the word murdered in the title was intentional and a big deal. Germany as a nation was officially admitting to a crime. Jewish-American architect Peter Eisenman won the commission. The memorial is thoughtfully lit at night and guarded. The pillars are made of hollow concrete. They stand in a gently sunken area which can be entered from any side. The number of pillars isn't symbolic of anything. It's simply how many fit on the provided land. The memorial's location, where the wall once stood, is also coincidental. In Berlin alone, there were 160,000 Jewish residents before Hitler took power. Tens of thousands fled the Nazi regime, and many thousands more were arrested, sent to nearby Sachsenhausen concentration camp, and eventually killed, murdered. Along the way, you'll find an information center. Inside, the exhibits trace the rise of Nazism and how it led to World War II. 6 portraits representing the 6 million Jewish victims look out, putting a human face on the staggering numbers.